Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about godless clerics. And we're going to talk about how non religious players need to show more respect for religious players when they're playing clerics, and how the godless cleric is a massive problem within Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition that needs to get fixed quick. Alright, so I was very shocked by something that happened recently. So we brought in a new player into our group, Frederick, okay? And Frederick is a problem player from the past who has just come back into our game. He's a friend of mine for about 10-15 years, and he specifically requested to return into our game when he came back from New Jersey into Pennsylvania. Now, New Jersey is an interesting thing. A lot of Pennsylvanians do not like to go into New Jersey. I think this is harsh to say, but I think there is some evidence for it. So New Jersey, you can go in for free, but you have to pay to get out, which is really interesting, right? So like in Pennsylvania, not everybody, but quite a few people consider like New Jersey as like the Mordor of America, just kind of a dark place that we don't really want to go. The reason why I don't want to go there is when I go there, they make it so that you can't turn on streets for like 2 miles, and it's nuts. The other thing is they won't let you do a left. Like there's all these weird jug handles. The other thing is when you go there, you can't pump your own gas. Like it is like going to another country. It is just so backwards, and traveling in a vehicle is so frustrating and so like backwards that so that's another reason why we brought Frederick in. Is he moved to New Jersey when it happened. We were all like, what are you doing? Like, who would move from Pennsylvania to New Jersey? That's like moving from Narnia to Mordor. And sure enough, 6 months later, he's right back, and he's like, please put me in your game, because I've gone through American trauma living in New Jersey for 6 months. That's the trauma, just living in New Jersey for 6 months. Right? So I was like, oh my gosh, you just got back from New Jersey? You do need help as a friend. So I'm bringing you into the game, right? So we brought him in, and so we were running a one shot this week, right? And I was like, okay, hey, listen, Frederick, make an 8th level character, 8th level D&D 5e, official D&D content. Don't bring it like he brought the Southlands book to me, like some scrub third-party nonsense. He always he wants to build a super powerful character, so rather than be constrained by official D&D content, he's like, oh, let me jump over to this nonsense, third-party 5e creator who's just making a bunch of powerful stuff so they can sell a book, right? And I'm like, nah, come on, shut that noise down, keep it official, right? So he's like, well, okay, but add me to the Facebook thread, and I got 20 questions. I'm like, why do you have 20 questions? I told you, 8th level character, D&D 5e, go, right? Any class, any race, any background, just get it from official sources. Why there got to be a bunch of questions, right? And he did. He just had a ton of questions. I was like, oh my gosh, jeez. And it's just frustrating right out of the gate, right? Like, and someone like, oh man, this guy was a problem in the past. I thought, I went through a whole chain of questions to make sure he'd be set for this, but like it looks like there might be problems. So it was very challenging. Right? I was like, oh man, let's see what happens here, right? So first thing he does is he comes in and he says, hey everybody, what's your roles? And so immediately, and so this is this is our dedicated player dungeon master who's running this one, right? And and so basically I'm not running this, but I immediately was like, no, we don't fill roles in this game, right? We don't, and the reason why is we don't want what happens in every game where you fill roles is whoever is the least formidable player, whoever has the weakest will has to play the cleric, because everybody's like, well, I filled the fighter, I filled the warlock, and now we have a barbarian, and somebody's got to do the cleric, because a lot of players do not want to go in without healing, right? And so Mikey, Mikey will like it, the whole life serial, whoever is your weakest willed player is going to end up playing the cleric. And so I said, no, we don't fill roles, because I don't want anybody getting stuck playing a cleric, right? So then the conversation bounced into one of my, Philip, my player, was like, hey, that's not, cleric isn't a bad class, right? They're mechanically strong. And I'm like, well, actually, the problem is, though, it's not that they're not mechanically strong. There's a narrative side to this class. And if you play a cleric, you have to heal people, right? You know, like you roll into a village and there's a blind person there, you have to make a very personal, very important question. Like, do I heal this person of a lifetime malady? Do I convert people into? So immediately Frederick is like, well, I play godless clerics, right? And then Gabriel, my player, comes in and says, how do you play godless clerics? And I immediately put in lamely, right? Like, and then it just became this conversation of, right, like, why are you going to play a godless cleric, right? If you play a cleric of Pelor and you walk into a village, people will see your holy symbol and say, hey, you're a cleric of Pelor, welcome, we're so glad you're here, can you heal this person? You have goodwill with the group immediately, right? Whereas you walk in with a godless cleric, no one knows what your symbol, and they're like, what are you? Can you heal? There are real gods. Why do you not serve a real god? You serve some vague concept that you made up yourself? Are you a real cleric? Right? And so it's a suboptimal build, right? And I couldn't believe this. I'm an evangelical Christian. I 100% allow, because it says you can run a godless cleric in 5e, I allow it. But I couldn't believe it. The actual dungeon master, right? He said, you know what? If you play a godless cleric, I will make you roll a percentile dice on every single spell you cast, and on 50 or below, you will your spell will fail, right? So immediately he dropped the entire concept, because he did, he's a mechanical player. He doesn't want to kind of deal with that, right? But I couldn't believe it. And this was a non-religious dungeon master is like, hey, like, clerics are built on real world clerics, right? And there's no godless real world clerics, not that anybody cares about or thinks have any power, right? And so he's like, if you're going to run a cleric, you better run a god cleric. And I think that's from a narrative perspective and from a mechanical perspective. The mechanical godless cleric is a suboptimal build, right? So if you're at a table that cares about optimal builds, you really shouldn't be playing a godless cleric. I thought this was a really fascinating occurrence that happened in our thread. I wanted to share it with you. Thanks for letting me share it with you. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.